on over here to our membership. $79 a year gets you all access. Normally it's $10 a month. So, what a great Christmas gift. Think about it. And in fact, I might even sing a Christmas carol or two around the holidays if we get you to sign up with us. You'll be glad you did. Great gift. So, you know, I want to tell you there's a lot going on. Hidden and protected by the oldest religion in the world, the evil ones were derailed by the appearance of Jesus Christ on the scene about 2,000 years ago. Being afraid that people would believe in and follow Jesus, they had to make a plan to stay in power and to rule the world. So they created occult groups with signs and symbols and practices intended to be visible to everyone, but they weren't understood by everybody, only by those within their elite group. By hiding within and behind those actions and those symbols and their activities, they easily blended into society, and they've infiltrated every level of our society. For the small price, just a small price of sacrificing maybe their soul to the devil or making lifetime covenants with powerful, sinister groups. And promises of financial and societal success, membership of the elitist societies was made, and those promises are satisfied. Well, the dedication of those members goes really deep, and the commitment is intended to be lifelong. Violation or breaking those covenants will lead to brutal punishment. Yeah, something simple like cutting off their limbs or death by slashing of the throat. Told you it was dark. Other stuff I won't talk about, but let's just say it's not something that they're going to easily decide to give over all the secrets and break that covenant. Now, many people in society, just general people, are pretty aware of Illuminati and understand that it's generally associated with, Hollywood actors and musicians of all genres. Commonly known occult symbols like covering one eye or having a black eye or making a triangle or okay sign with the fingers or putting a finger to the lips like saying shh. Butterflies are also a symbol of the occult. Beautiful things are being hijacked and used for evil. But people don't always make the connection that these groups that are developed that appear to be good and they're benevolent, such as Freemasons. They might create, some programs that are good and kind of hide behind that, or like Scottish Rites Hospitals. That's another one. Catholic Charities, and I don't mean to offend anybody. All these groups can have some good things, or like I know the Catholic Church, it can be good, but deep down, dark behind, what I'm talking about here is the deception that's going on, and people don't always realize everything that's going on. So what they do is they build trust in the community, and they leave the Illuminati and the covens and the satanic churches and Black Pope and his cohorts and all those groups. They leave them then free to fully participate in places they ordinarily wouldn't be welcome. If their true intention were known, they would not get away with it. Even the straight-laced, quiet neighborhood, sweet little church your grandmother or your auntie attends is not immune to this Trojan horse infiltration. I've done a lot of research on this, and I personally have experienced that deception as when the pandemic hit, I could see pretty clearly which churches were really committed to what they said they were committed to, and which churches were more committed to complying and doing what they were told to do. Really piqued my interest. Imagine there's some of you out there that might have experienced that as well. And so I'm hoping today, with what we have to share and with my guest, Dani, that we're going to be able to really open your eyes. We just want to make you think. We're not telling you what to do. We're not telling you that we have all the answers. We are definitely not telling you what to believe. And that's my disclaimer before we dive in any more deeply. My intent is to not try to convert anyone. And I just want to bring forward information that may or may not be well known with the purpose of helping people understand maybe one reason why our world is in such a mess and what's really going on. So, Dani, are you over there?
I am over there.
I am so glad you're here with me.
So am
And
I.
yeah, Dani and I've done some shows together in the
Hmm.
past, and I know that she's just a very smart and resourceful person. And so when I told her the
Yeah.
subject matter, I knew she was my go-to gal for now knowing what is going on. So how are you doing with everything that's going on around the world lately, Dani?
Wow. I don't think there's a really super positive answer that can come out of that from most people. I've had some pretty, I've had ups and downs. I've had some pretty far downs. I'm on a up right now. uh, yeah, I have to stay away from a lot of the things that I used to sort of pay attention to, people like YouTube. I still am like sucked into YouTube, but I had to stop going to some of my favorite channels where all they wanted to do is talk about nothing but this politician is doing this politician. It's like all day long and Fauci, like stuff. I
Right.
just like I can't just do that.
Well, and the thing is, that's really another reason why we are here is because we don't want people to just do that. We want them to understand what's going on and then to be able to have a better idea of how to respond, how to even make changes in the world because it's up to each of us.
Yeah.
We are the people, and it doesn't matter what country you live in, you are the people. This is not the world belonging to any elite people who think that they're better than any of the rest of us. This is our world, and we have to share it. So we have to speak up, we have to raise up, to encourage one another and learn from one another to do this. And so one of the things about it is that the takeover of our world by the global elite, it's something that I think most truth seekers, which is what I am and I know you are, and really, I think that I could safely call at least most of our listeners as a truth seeker. We may have some that are visiting, and if you are visiting for the first time today, no matter what part of the world you're in, glad to have you. And I hope that it's something that helps open your eyes. But there are many people that still think it's conspiracy theory or the belief of maybe some sects, not sex, but sects that are out there.
Mhm.
And we were talking, Dani, and some of the information I had shared with you reminded you that you actually wanted to talk about what started this evolution of change and who was the guy that kind of got, let's
Yes.
say, the infiltration of the church started. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. And I have a little comment about, what you were saying is not meaning to offend anyone or,
Exactly.
convert anyone. Most people in the Catholic Church or any church, they aren't there for a bad reason. They're there for the right reason. They just
Blue.
don't know the bad things that are going on around them.
That's right.
Even Freemasons, most of them don't know. They have no idea.
I
And
agree.
so it's not, when you're talking about a group, you particularly, your audience, a visitor might like to hear that you're talking about the few behind the scenes that are pulling strings, not the masses. So they're noticing things.
Yes.
Yes, they are. And that's when people start noticing too many things, that's when trouble starts getting stirred up at the same time. It's kind of funny how that happens.
Well, and that's why one reason things are getting tougher and tougher and tough. Get things fixed a little bit, and the powers that should not be do not want that to happen.
Right.
So they're going to
Yep.
push. They're going to push even harder.
Yeah.
So how did this start?
Yes, this is something very close to me personally, and that's why I have already researched this bit of your show today because I was raised Pentecostal. And I had a very negative experience being Pentecostal, and lots of them that I've known also did. And so there is a man named Charles Fox Parham, um, who was hailed as the founding father of Pentecostalism, which is at the core of that is, direct personal experience of God through baptism with the Holy Spirit. And he was born in 1872 in Iowa and became a Christian when he was a teenager. And he claimed that he became deathly ill in his 20s and thought it was because God was punishing him for not going into the ministry after having become a Christian. He was a Methodist, I believe. And so when he was 26, he moved to Topeka, Kansas, and started a home for Christians seeking healing. And he started in his newspaper called the Apostolic Faith newspaper. And he traveled around to a lot of different states, sort of like investigating supernatural healings that were being, people were talking about. And so he kind of was like tying that into what he was doing. And then in the year 1900, he started the Bethel Bible College in a big old mansion he rented somehow. I don't know how he afforded that. And he ended up with 40 students, and he did this thing. He left for 3 days and gave his students the task of investigating what the New Testament indicated as the sign of baptism of the Holy Spirit. He wanted to know how you would know, like what that meant. And so when he comes back from his 3-day, wherever he went, they concluded that speaking in tongues was the initial sign.
Okay.
And that
so in other words, if someone did not speak in tongues, then they did not have that gift.
Yes, and that is my personal affliction because I have never spoken in tongues. And so my family believes that I am going to hell.
I've heard this before, and I know that there are people who just lament and sorrow because they do not speak in tongues, and I don't have.
I was one of those for
wow,
a very long time.
Sorry.
I just knew I loved Jesus. I just would like just seeing, any movie where, like the crucifixion, I would be bawling my eyeballs out. And it's like, I know I love Jesus. Yeah. So how are you telling me that I don't have the Holy Spirit? Because, that's not what Paul said. Like when you believe, then you have the Holy Spirit. It's like, that's it. That's all you got to do, and
okay. So these students came up with that definition, and what did he do with that?
So well, for some reason, the school closed not too long after that, and in 1901. And in 1902, he did this thing where he claimed he had the knowledge to find the Ark of the Covenant and the tabernacle. And lots of newspapers ran articles about it, and you can read in, there's lots of them. There's a really good article, like a really detailed one in the Democrat and Chronicle newspaper from Rochester, New York that year. And it explains how he was organizing an expedition to the Holy Land to find it based on, and it also said he was a student of ancient Hebrew. And he recently came into possession of a document written in ancient Hebrew. And right now I'm going to start quoting the newspaper here, where he gives the description in the cave. Okay, this is my little side note. Where the Ark and the tabernacle was hidden by Jeremiah. Okay, so the paper printed what he said was the document, like actually word for word, and it said what it actually was, and what people didn't realize, it was just a verse from the apocryphal book, the Second Maccabees, chapter 2, and that to a Protestant, they wouldn't know that, they wouldn't have that. They wouldn't have read that. They wouldn't have recognized that. And these were the people that he was speaking to. And so he got a lot of collections and just kind of ran off with it. And yeah. And so he apparently pulled the money collecting stunt again in 1908 and got lots of donations after more papers ran more articles about how now he claimed searched for maps and he found maps that were going to, like, he was just people's belief in him that he was, going to be able to find this. And it was a big thing. And he never made it there to the Holy Land because unfortunately he was mugged and all the money was taken. And of
Oh,
course,
how unfortunate.
yeah, but
Oh,
yeah, I know, right? So convenient, right? But before 1908, before like that happened, before he came back with that second part there, he had led a movement in Zion City, Illinois, after the elders of congregation there were caught in, well, the head guy in particular was caught in multiple scandals with lots of mistresses and money embezzling from the church, and just so he had to scoot, and so. Um, our hero here, he rolls in, saw, like, swoops in and sees as his opportunity to be their, prophet in chief. And but so there's I love how well documented stuff about him was then, because they actually, wrote what he said word for word in a lot of papers. And he came to Zion, Illinois, and was in front of, all these people that were looking. They loved their church, they loved their faith, they wanted a new leader. And he said, 4 months ago, I saw Zion City in a vision, and the troubles of its people were made clear to me. Arise and go to Zion, take up the burden of an oppressed people, a voice said to me. Like, he said that. And instead of, like, okay, this is the best part. I am here and will bring you out of all of your difficulties if you will trust in me. Like, this guy.
wow.
Yeah, he said that. Really. But obviously, clearly that didn't happen. And after he ditched the congregation, he was arrested for soliciting sex from a teenage boy. And yeah, so
So corrupt.
yeah,
And that,
it's
unfortunately,
terrible.
is also going on these days, where we're finding out more and more that just the debauchery and
Yes.
disgusting behaviors that are happening behind the scenes that used to be, no, there's no way that's happening. But it's coming to the surface now, and we cannot argue anymore that these things are happening. It's another reason why we need to be really aware of what we're involved in, because just like as you were mentioning a few minutes ago, we don't always know what's going on around us, and we go in for the
Exactly.
best reasons, and we're the best people, and our intentions are all really good, and we're part of these groups that are doing wonderful things. But like I explained at the beginning of the show, things that are going on behind the scenes are hidden and they're deceptive. And because these groups that are set up to build trust within the community, they're being hijacked by
Exactly.
evildoers,
Yep.
and even by the occult, which is,
Well,
it's disgusting.
my buddy Michael, Michael down in Los Angeles, he was a seeker. He was spending his whole life trying to find a path to God somewhere, and he got caught up in something called the First Church of Christ.
Oh yes. Oh boy,
Mhm.
they're good at what they do.
They are, and so there's people and charlatans around every corner looking to get into the pockets of people and stunt their own connection to God by sort of putting a shunt in front of you, like you were saying, Dan. I was just riveted by your conversation there about what was said to you. I mean, I just can't imagine.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so
My uncle, this is so sad to me because my uncle is still Pentecostal, and my grandpa was the deacon of the church.
wow.
And so he passed away just a couple years ago. And while I was there at my grandpa's funeral, my uncle came up to me and said, I finally spoke in tongues just a few weeks ago. And it's like, this man, I adore my uncle. He was like one of the few positive male influences in my life, and I adored him. And it broke my heart because he was still striving for what I had been striving for. And it's like what I see is it's always a heartbreaking road. And he certainly, I'm a little flustered. I'm still upset about it, but
Well, I can tell that it's a very emotional thing, and
yeah.
I can almost guarantee that there's
Well,
people
what I
sitting
think
out there in the
happens,
audience that are feeling that way too.
yeah. I mean, I'm sure there are people listening that have possibly even experienced this, but what I think happens, and what I felt like I was sort of, this was my breaking point, with the tongues thing. I realized that I desired that so much that it was all I was focusing on, and I was getting myself into this emotional frenzy. And for him, I could tell, and I think this is what happened, and I think this is the most common thing for people who are like both of us, that he went on to be in this, not the emotional frenzy of like the hypnotic music, like Hillsong does, the repetition, and the Pentecostal church does the same thing. It's not that trance state that puts them into that. It's an emotional state of just being broken down and breaking, and finally it's like a mental break, and then you go into this tongues thing, and it's like it's not something of God, it's something of deception. It's evil. I'm not saying that all speaking in tongues is evil at all times. I'm saying that what causes that in these people,
Right.
and especially him, is evil.
Again, it's the hijacking of
Yes.
what can be a good thing or is a good thing, and twisting it and manipulating it for different purposes.
Exactly. And
And
Parham was a Freemason. And the Pentecostals, they were really against Freemasonry. And so he claimed to have left Freemasonry because it didn't align with, his flock. But I mean, come on, who really leaves? And
Well,
really,
not many, as I talked about before. The punishment is great,
well,
and it is implemented at times. So,
well, what's
and they don't know, so they
there's
don't know they need to leave.
there's so many different brands of religion. There's so many different sects around Christianity. You know what I mean? There's different places. There's different. So I want to, because I don't know personally. I'm going to ask a question, but before I do, I wanted to say something about this First Church of Christ, because my friend was in a similar type of a situation, because he was gay, and they told him in the First Church of Christ that, once you do this once you get this new baptism, that's it. Whatever you did before is okay, but the minute that you got this baptism with this church, that was it. You could never, sin again, and it would be 10 times worse or whatever. They scared the guy to death.
Oh,
And,
yes.
and at
It's
this,
they call it re-crucifying Jesus when you're grieving the spirit like that.
yeah, and so he didn't know what to do. He was literally ready to kill himself, because at that point
Yeah.
he felt like there was nothing he could do. There was nowhere to go. So I just wanted to throw that in there. Could you please explain what makes Pentecostal different than different other, like Jehovah's Witnesses or Mormons, or why is Pentecostal Christianity different? What signifies it to be significantly different than other sects?
Well, they did stem from that, it's not the purist movement. It's like a movement that was after, like, during the Edwardian period, of really getting down to like deep set morals, and so and living biblically, and really what they see in the Bible, and they see the gospel and everything. It's not a lot different than a Baptist church. But it's the baptism of the Holy Spirit that they're misinterpreting. And of course, like I said, the man who invented the whole thing was a Freemason, obviously an infiltrator. So what they are looking for, a physical manifestation being entered you, like the Holy Spirit being in you. They want a physical sign. So they totally ignore, like, Matthew 12:39. They don't want to read this. And Jesus is saying, a wicked and adulterous generation seeks for a sign, and no sign will be given to it except the sign of Jonah the prophet, which is, being in the belly of the whale for 3 days, and it's like Jesus being in the tomb for 3 days. And so it's like right there, he's telling you, and then having, and he's like, blessed are these people because they're believing without seeing. And, come on, you can read the Bible and see that you're not supposed to be seeking for this physical excitement and whatever pleasure it's pleasure seeking, really.
Right.
It tells you not to do that. But they twist the words around, but so their beliefs, it's still like, I guess what you would call a regular Christian church. It's just that physical. They want that, what people are calling Kundalini spirit now,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's a big correlation too, because not only I just finding out now, I didn't know, but finding out now that the Pentecostals was started by a Mormon, or excuse me, by a Mason.
Yeah.
So were the Mormons. They were started
Yep.
by a Mason, and so were the Jehovah's Witnesses. We're also
Mhm.
founded by a Mason, and so was
Yeah.
Alcoholics Anonymous. If you want to get down to it.
Oh yeah, their Kabbalistic 12-step program.
Exactly. Okay.
And so Parham had a really big role in what would become Assemblies of God. And that's where you get things like Hillsong and Foursquare Gospel and many televangelist characters like Tammy Faye Baker and Jimmy Swaggart and Benny Hinn. And Elvis was an Assemblies of God choir singer, and Sarah Palin was a member for a couple decades, and Jerry Lee Lewis played at their tent revivals. And
Wow.
so
Oh, they're everywhere.
It's
The more
everywhere.
you research, it's incredible how deeply. It's a little painful too. So if any of you do start looking into it, if you're not already aware, just realize that some of the people that you may really just love or